All right. Nothing like getting the show. It should just be a part of the show that you let me deal with my technical difficulties for the first 10, 15 seconds, because every week there is an update or a change or something does not work. It is unbelievable. But I am glad to be with you guys. We have a ton to talk about. But I'll open up the floor. Last week, we didn't even get into headlines because you guys had so much going on your own transaction. So anybody have something? I always like to get that stuff on the floor. Who's got something going on one of their transactions that would be a good share for the group this morning? Anybody have anything? No deals are a smooth deal. There's always something going on. Well, we can talk about the big news. Obviously, if you haven't heard by now, I think you've shut down your social media accounts, but Compass has made a play for anywhere real estate. This is a huge acquisition, and to be noted that there is still a lot of legalities to get through, and this thing isn't even scheduled to finally close until the second half of 2026. But in talking to a couple of, did somebody have a comment? All right. In talking to a couple of agents, I realized that a lot of people didn't even understand what Anywhere was. But Anywhere is the former Realogy. Realogy is the parent company for a lot of common brands that you guys do business with or are part of as agents. So that's Coldwell Banker, Century 21, ERA, Better Homes and Gardens, Sotheby's. I think that's the full list. So I ran some Century 21 franchises in the mid 2000s to 2015 with a partner, and very familiar with the Realogy brand, and which rebranded to this Anywhere. And the brands do operate pretty independently of each other. So there is a parent company, but they all kind of have their own definitely look and feel. They're each kind of known for their their own little spin that they put on things. At the end of the day, I think where technology has gone, the brands are kind of all just the same. And to me, most brands in the marketplace at this point, they're really not going to do anything different for an agent's career. You are moving brokerages, you're changing the logo on your business card, you're going to get some flashy new marketing. And at the end of the day, if you still don't have the ability to generate clients, you're going to be in trouble. So I think it's an interesting acquisition. I mean, we've talked about it on this show before. I think most of these were brands that have probably seen their best times. They're great brands. Some of these are iconic brands. I mean, the gold jacket at Century 21 is probably one of the most iconic things that the real estate market's ever seen. It just seems like their models have been kind of passed by to some of the newer models that have come along. So it's going to be interesting. You know, it's a huge acquisition. I mean, some of the numbers, if you haven't seen them, we're talking about 340,000 real estate professionals combined. So that is a ton of agents. 1.2 million transactions annually are some of the numbers out there. So I don't know. What are some initial thoughts? What do you guys think, being in the field? What is it? What does it mean to you, or what do you think when you hear stuff like this?
I wonder what's happened to all the ma and pa's, I guess.
Yeah, so I think, the mom and pa's really aren't involved in this, right? These are all bigger brands, but I will say I don't know what the numbers are, but I want to say the independent brokerages still make up the majority. And I can do a quick chat GPT. They still make up the majority of real estate agents. So what? I'm just curious myself. Let's see what we can get for some quick numbers here. Yeah, 55% of realtors are affiliated with an independent, non-franchise brokerage. So still the majority of agents are at, now independents, there are some large independents out there, right? That are they're not franchised, and they may have thousands of agents. So some of the independents out there are large, but most of them are smaller, maybe 7 to 10 agents, but they make up 55% of the agent pool. I don't know how those guys are staying in business, to be honest. I ran an independent for a decade. We got over 200 agents in 4 states, and we did everything in our power to try and compete. But as technology advances, if you really want to put your agents in the best position, when that comes to offering them competitive commission splits, giving them first-class training, giving them options to build wealth in other ways besides just their commission, it's extremely difficult to do those things. So as agents kind of open their eyes, start to spread their wings, and look around, it gets extremely difficult to retain agents at these smaller independents. When information didn't flow as rapidly as it does today, I think it was a lot easier for the smaller independents to stay in business, and maybe their agents didn't even understand what they were missing out there. So anybody have any other thoughts, questions? Independence versus franchise versus, some of these big box brands. What do you guys think about the brands? What do they mean to you when you're thinking about brand of your brokerage? Not everybody at once. Somebody unmute that mic and speak your mind.
I don't
Stephanie.
think it really makes a difference. I don't think it really makes a difference. It just really depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for big box brands? Some people aren't. Some agents aren't that type of person. Some agents want the mom and pop local brokerage because they only want to do 3 deals a year for their friends and family.
What about just brand in general, Stephanie? What are your thoughts?
Brand in general?
Yeah, forget about the size.
I don't know if some sellers even realize that there is a difference in brand. I just don't think that they even understand the inner workings of it. So I don't know if from a client perspective, it really makes much of a difference.
Well, I'm with you. I mean, I bet my real estate career that brand, as far as brand name recognition. Now, your brand, what you do, what you deliver, I think does matter. You as the agent, right, and having a brand that gives you some tools, right? But I went from owning and operating a Century 21 franchise where I had, at the time, supposedly one of the best recognized brands in the world, not just real estate brands, brands in general, competing with McDonald's and Nike, right? But at the end of the day, I traded that to open up Rovithis Realty, which nobody had ever heard of, and yet we still did, I think, 100 plus transactions in our first year. So how did we do that with only a few agents? If brand matters so much, how did we do it? Right, we did it because people do business with the person. You nailed it. Most of the transactions, the person is doing business with, the client is doing business with the person. Your top producers could go to ABC Realty that nobody's ever heard of, and they're still going to be top producers. And that's why I think, the brands that are winning out here are those that they're going to offer you a really, really high split with a low cap, some training. Teams are kind of becoming brokerages where they're taking on the load of some of the training. So I don't know. Margareta, you've had your hand up. What do you think?
I think that the brand might actually be somewhat important going forward with millennials and the tech-savvy generations. I think, I think there's this big shift in the real estate industry right now. The only question is, how much business is actually generated by that subgroup, of people. I think brand recognition in general, if you look at people who are buying, Gucci or whatever, it's a very specific group because it's just something that they follow. So, we're talking about really tech savvy followers. They might be more inclined maybe to say, oh, I need this brand because, I'm recognizing it. Where I think up to now, especially the older generations who have properties to sell, and there's a huge group of that generation, they prefer the person-to-person contact, and that's why real estate has been that person-to-person, business. But I think there might be some shift going forward to brand recognition. But it's a question of how much actually business is generated by that group.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. I think when you get some consolidation and you get more stuff happening online, I definitely think there could be a shift back towards some brand, because I do think there was some brand recognition. I do think it mattered, maybe 70s or early 80s, if you were a Century 21 agent. I definitely think that mattered. And then I think it kind of got watered down and it really didn't matter. And it'll be interesting to see, does it start to come back and matter? And it's interesting because Compass is, saying the right things at the beginning here to say, hey, we're not going to touch those brands. Those brands are going to stay those brands, right? We're not going to change you and convert all of the agents to Compass agents, which would be interesting. Is that just lip service now to prevent agents from moving, or is that really their plan? Because if you were building a brand, would you want to have it all separated out amongst 8 different names? Or would you want to have it under one name? What do you think?
I sure don't think I want it all under one brand. I mean, Zillow's kind of taken over the world, right? So it's like, I think it's all about their advertising, and maybe smaller places obviously can't afford to advertise like that. So we have to pay for that. And which is, it's a good chunk of change. And I'm thinking that, you don't want one brand to take over the whole world like an Amazon, there won't be any.
I'm saying, Paul, if you're Compass, what do you want to do? You want to operate, 8 brands? Or do you want to operate one?
I think they might improve their tech. That would give them great power. But branding wise, they probably stay the same. That's their, it's like McDonald's is still McDonald's. Nobody's messing with that. The menu keeps changing. And I think, in real estate, the huge thing is the technology that we're using right now. And can you really, throw that to all the brands that are using it under that one umbrella?
Martin, I saw your hand up. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was gonna pretty much same thing that Margarita said, that, keep the brands separately, but maybe, as far as technology and everything else, kind of do one platform on that one just to make it more cost effective if I was Compass.
I mean, that's what they're saying. They're saying, hey, we're looking for efficiencies in operating, synergies over the brands. So we're going to go to one tech platform, but we're going to let them operate independently. Lauren.
On Compass, everybody's going to one name. Not behind that, right? I can have 8 different signs with 8 different names in the town showing up, or I could have one name across every single one of those properties and just by numbers game. If it's something you're seeing everywhere, it's gonna be in your head. So I would want one name out as much as possible.
That's what I would want, Lauren. That's what I would want if I was doing this deal. I would want to put everything with one, and try and take over market share and, have a name that is synonymous with real estate versus trying to build up 8 different brands moving forward, you know?
And I wouldn't be surprised, of course, playing nice in the sandbox while we're trying to figure out the last bits of the deal legally. Yep, we're gonna let you guys all be what you want to be, who you are, and then when it comes down to it, whatever is best for the business, if that means one name, one platform, probably where it actually ends up.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, look, you can make an argument that individual brands, there are, companies that run a bunch of different brands under one parent company. This happens all the time, right? If you look at, Coca-Cola, they've acquire tons of different drink brands. Everything's not Coca-Cola. They've got a bunch of different brands. They're all drinks, but they brand them and they run separate brands for all these different things. Now, I think the difference, a lot of times when you see these, is there are niches within, even within drinks, right? There are health drinks, there are energy drinks, there are protein drinks, there are hydration drinks, there are electrolyte drinks. So there's all these different drink categories that you could say, hey, I want to build a brand that is synonymous with that. I don't know that real estate has that many different layers to it, right? I think there is something to be said for luxury in real estate, right? So you could have residential and then luxury residential, right? And some companies like a Sotheby's have tried to go after that market, right? Say, hey, we are going to be luxury, but 7 different ones that just sell residential real estate, man, I don't know. Anybody else have thoughts? All right. Well, the next kind of thing is kind of flying under the radar a little bit because of the Compass acquisition, but Realtor.com teamed up with OpenAI. So this is pretty interesting. So this was they actually entered this deal back in May of 2024, but they're actually moving into implementation. So they're trying to take some of the content data that they currently have and fuel the AI models. So the goal is, high quality, timely, relevant search results. So, somehow to personalize home search even more than what is going on right now. So that'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. But OpenAI has clearly been the winner so far in the AI space. And Realtor.com kind of jumping on that partnership will be interesting to see, can they take some market share away from the leader in the portal space, which is obviously Zillow. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Has anybody seen anything on Realtor.com as far as how home search is working, or if they've implemented anything just yet? Anybody seen anything as far as what Realtor.com is doing? I guess the goal would be long term, can you start to know, hey, this is a family, this is their income. Let me serve up some properties to them that I think are a good match based on everything that I know about this family. So no longer do you go in and say, I'm looking for, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch, but more like a TikTok feed, let's say, where it just serves you things based on what it knows about you that it thinks you're going to like. I don't think that that's that crazy, right? People tend to like what the algorithms are doing on these social media platforms. So could search turn into something like that, where you'd still be able to search if you wanted to, but it might know a little bit more about you and be able to try and send you things that it thinks, basically what an agent's trying to do. right? Know things about the consumer and try and find properties that you think are going to meet their needs. But can AI do it better? What do we think?
I think AI can do everything better.
I tend to agree with you. It is amazing how well it does pretty much everything. And in the short term, I think there's still plenty of room for the AI powered agent to be successful. So that's the good news. But man, you better be on the AI train and using every ounce of it because it gets better and better every single day. Martin.
I guess my question is, yes, AI can do everything better, but a lot of people are saying that agents are going to be obsolete. I believe in real estate when it comes to your biggest asset. I think people still need that human touch. I mean, just everybody's thoughts on that one. That's not just people are gonna let a machine sell their house and AI do that. You still need that human contact, that one-on-one.
Yeah, look, I mean, people have been saying, technology is going to take away agents I feel like the past decade, right? So I don't think tomorrow the real estate agent is gone. At some point in the future, I think the real estate agent is gone, or at least the role as we know it today. And I think some agents are going to adapt to whatever that new role is, and some won't, and they won't, be in the space. No different than, where are we looking at right now? So let's look at taxi drivers. Uber will never work. Uber drivers, robo-taxi will never work. If you were betting, do you think robo-taxi works, or you're always going to want a human driving that car? Who's got a thought on that? Nicole, I saw your
I
hand.
feel it's a little different.
Yeah, I agree that maybe the role will change, but I think real estate is always going to be more of an emotional decision than financial for a lot of people. So having a human touch somewhere in there, obviously your investors go use AI, but someone who's selling their house they've lived in for 25 years, I think having an agent in there to help them. We all know half of our job is being a therapist. I think there's still room for us somewhere, even with AI. It might change in the future, but I have hopes that we're still going to be needed.
Yeah, I think we're still needed for a while. Hopefully, for at least for if you're on this call for the length of your career, right? I think that's all the people on this call need it to last for. Is just make it through our career. And I think we're just in a completely different world when it is doing our job potentially, right? Because everything's changed. If it's doing our job, it's doing a lot of other jobs, and who knows what this whole world looks like. Right. So I don't know that there's a concern of like, oh my God, AI. If AI takes our job, I think ours is pretty far down the line of what it's going to take away. So we've got bigger problems, I would say, if the real estate agent is being replaced. I think it's just like everything else. There's going to be a little bit of tech, a little bit more tech, a little bit more tech that agents need to start to implement in with their day to day. Any other thoughts? Anybody heard from any agents at some of these brands? What is their initial reaction? Has anybody talked to any agents, or do we have any agents on from any of these brands? I think there could be plenty to be excited about. If you weren't happy, maybe with your brand, hey, this is a chance to get a refresh. But I think most people get nervous about rebrand and tech. I remember we did our first acquisition, and this is an acquisition within brands. This was, we owned one Century 21 franchise. We took over 4 others. And I remember walking into those meetings where we said, hey, you're being acquired. And this was by the same brand. And the agents were freaking out. No name change, just an ownership change. And agents were freaking out. So I think it's for whatever reason, the human psyche just does not like change. And they get nervous. And hey, if I'm going to rebrand, then maybe it's time to look at all of my options if I'm going to have to rebrand anyway. Or at least I feel like I might end up having to rebrand. All right, so we talked AI. What else? We could do some market slides. Those are pretty boring, but we probably should share just a little bit of this stuff. Let me see here. So these are some KCM slides that I'm going to rip through pretty quickly. Just KCM does their update on the 10th of every month. If you're not a KCM subscriber, I'm a big fan. It really keeps you up to date. I think it's a really easy, cheap way to stay informed of what's going on. But unemployment's still holding pretty steady at 4.2% right here, seasonally adjusted. Here's the thing that's a little bit more concerning, which is job growth is stalling out. Right, so the number of jobs added by month, and who knows, I know these numbers can be all over the board and depends on who's reporting the numbers. And Keeping Current Matters, one of the things that I do like is they always give you the source of where their data is coming from. But new job growth is very concerning because I think this is where people are looking at AI going, okay, that's great. We're at the 4%. If we go back a slide, you look at where 4% is as far as unemployment, like that is staggeringly low, probably unhealthy low levels. So, but when you listen to some of this job growth stuff and how bad it is, they're saying that some of this unemployment could get extremely high. Worst case scenarios, when you're talking about AI, you could be talking more than 50% unemployment. And what does that do to the economy? So obviously we've talked about listing prices having flattened out. I mean, we are seeing it even in New England as I'm talking to agents now. The market is definitely cooling. So this slide here is just trying to show you some of the monthly median listing prices. I'd never seen it quarterly like this, and I know some of you guys might be just listening, but this is a great slide to check out. You can go back and watch our replay of this, but the cyclical nature of the median list price, even during a market that might be inclining in overall price, still has downturns over basically now till April. You'll see a slight, so I'm just looking here on, if you're looking at October 2022 to April of 2023, you see a drop of an average median list price about $40,000, and then it shoots back up. And then the following October of 23 to April of 24, you see that same like $30,000 drop. So I know some reports, and this happens year over year for the past 5 years. So here we are, we don't know what's going to happen from coming up on October of 25 till April of 26. But if you're looking at history here, it sure does look like you should see prices actually come down. Not crazy, but this isn't a time. So just something to keep in mind. If you're bringing a house to market now, expect it to be a little bit slower. And then this next one that they did was just the decades of downturns, which is kind of interesting. And it kind of shows, they gives you some good stats on what is happening during those downturns. What is happening to peak sales rate and down to the trough sales rate. So for instance, early 1980s, when you have this downturn, you had 4 million sales drop down to 2 million sales per year. Right, so this is across the United States, how many homes sell. This is a really important number for us as agents, because if there's just not a lot of deals happening, you could be the best agent since, the start of the industry here. And if there's no homes being traded, you can't sell any. So they had a 50% drop. The 2008 crisis at the peak, we were selling 7 million houses, and that dropped down to 3.5 million. COVID, we got to a peak of 5.6. End of COVID, it got down to 4.1. And then at 2022, it peaked at 6.4. And they're showing 3.9. I've seen numbers around 4 million home sales. Right? So if you combine, if you just, look at some of the peaks at 6.4 down to 4 million, whatever that number is, 39%. That's just, if you're just going about your business and you're not executing on your marketing, you've taken a 39% hit on how many homes you're selling, just because that's what the market's doing. Sometimes you will see, when these things happen, you see agents drop out, and then your top agents pick up those transactions. So sometimes your top agents are okay when these things happen. I don't feel like a ton of agents dropped out last year. I think you're starting to see it this year. And I think at the beginning of the year, I think you're going to see it again, because it's getting extremely difficult. Not only do you have to be a great agent, but you have to be a tech savvy agent. So some interesting stuff. I'm not going to get into all the details here. And then this is just some home price expectations of where our price is going. Everybody, suggesting that we are going up. Even your bear analysts here are the least bullish. People are saying 6.7% increase in prices between now and 2029. And your most optimistic bullish are at 27.4% increase in home prices. So anybody have any just thoughts on the market, what's going on, what you're seeing?
Hey, Steve, and hey, everybody. Dan from Semper here.
Hey, Dan.
How's it going? Yeah, I wanted to just kind of jump in. Some of the things, latest updates here on the mortgage side. I know you kind of touched into, the job market, and that is kind of a big concern with the Fed and the rate outlook. We did, upon their meeting last week, we did see rates actually tick up a little bit. Basically, what had happened is the market had kind of priced in the expected 0.25% rate cut. So that was already built into rates, and then really the market kind of reacted on the outlook over the next couple quarters. And there is some kind of disagreement on the Fed board that they aren't really all on the same page, but they are still looking to lower the rates over the next few meetings. They're saying right now target like around 6.4 for the end of this year, but Fannie Mae is saying that really we should be somewhere under 6% on the Fed on the rates next year. So that's a good long-term outlook. What we're also kind of seeing is, as far as like mortgage programs and what people are gearing towards, and this is even on your side of things, but a lot more people are starting to look into like fixer-uppers and ask more about homes that need some work. Trying to find value, trying to find things that are affordable for them. A big challenge right now is a lot of people just don't qualify for enough to buy the house that they want. Here's just a national statistic, but 46% of people in this country don't make enough to buy an average price house. So because of that, we're trying to look. So they're saying that 52%. There's a 52% increase in people looking into to homes that they're just calling fixer-uppers. Now, whether that's something that really needs repair or renovation or something like that, something like a 203K program to get into it, or maybe it's just something that needs some TLC. They're able to get into it, say with a conventional loan. Maybe these people have the money to be able to do some the work that they need. There are even programs, if you have a buyer that goes in on something on a conventional loan, they can get a HUD Title I loan to do work that they want to do after. 203K programs are becoming more popular. People are looking into them because, like I said, they're trying to find that value. And say, if I get this house at 200,000 and I'm going to put 50, 60, 70,000 into it, they're going to get the house that they want for 270 rather than, having to spend up to 350 or maybe 400,000 or whatever it is in the area. But those are just kind of example numbers, but that's kind of the idea of everything. So the 203K program up to $75,000 in repairs for, they call it repair, improve, or upgrade the home for $75,000. It's a limited 203K mortgage program. It keeps the process pretty simple. The lender, we can do everything from start to finish without having to involve HUD. Once you get over 75,000, it becomes a standard 203K program where you do have to involve a HUD counselor throughout the process, or HUD consultant, I should say. But still, both of those programs are really good. And being that it is an FHA program, it is accessible to a lot of people. More people qualify for FHA than conventional, as most of you guys know. We've talked about plenty of times on here. But being that it's an FHA program, it is something that a lot of people do qualify for. The biggest challenge when you're looking at doing like a 203K is kind of identifying the scope of work that is really going to need to be completed, and having a contractor that's going to be able to do that work for you and properly document and itemize everything, and because they've got a lot of paperwork to do as well.
So Dan,
but those are becoming
did the streamlined increase? 75,000 seems high. I thought
Yes,
it was
it
like
did.
15,000 or something.
It used to be 35,000. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's up to 75,000 now. I can look up exactly when it changed, but it was kind of recently that had changed. But so the limited 203K now up to 75,000, which makes a huge difference.
That's a ton of repairs. And guys, if you've got a buyer that is on the sidelines and is struggling and you can't get him into a home, I think, trying to reset those expectations, and like Dan's saying, go out and show them a couple of fixer-uppers, and maybe they're willing to, get into a nicer neighborhood, or maybe a neighborhood that they couldn't have gotten into before, but just have to do some work. And hey, we can build it right into your mortgage. So, anybody done one of these 203Ks?
You guys have a huge network of agents within your brokerage that you can bounce ideas off of, and like say, hey, do you have a contractor in this area? Have you ever done a 203K? Somebody around here that can help us, because like I said, just getting a contractor that's willing to do it and familiar with the process and able to do everything that's required.
Yeah. No, this is a great topic. So if anybody done anything recently that you want to share? Anybody done one? Hey, I did one and this came up, that came up, didn't realize this. Talkative group this morning. I know somebody's done one.
I've never done one, but I have
go ahead,
a
Nicole.
question.
Yep.
So for ones that may be like right on the border of the 75, it was obviously probably more common when the limit was 35. Do you have to have the contractor come out before you write the offer? Like, what would happen if you write the offer thinking the repairs are going to be 50,000 and they end up being over the limit, or even over what they can qualify for? Like us as agents, we don't really have those rough estimates. So is it best practice to just have the contractor out before writing the offer?
I mean, that's a good idea, because again, that is the biggest challenge, is identifying the scope of work and how much it's going to cost. And whether you're talking about repairs that are just to bring the house up to minimum FHA requirements that are 100% going to be required to be completed, or if they are maybe upgrades that the client wants, right? So maybe the kitchen is fully functional, but they wanted to put in new counters and cabinets or what have you. So, maybe it's trying to identify exactly what needs to be done, and then, kind of picking and choosing wants versus needs to stay within that limit, or within their limit. Because I mean, I guess the underlying question here is, what if we went into it thinking it's going to be a limited 203K, but ends up having to be a standard 203K? And as long as the client still qualifies, then it wouldn't be like a deal breaker. We'd be able to switch the program, reset the expectations, because it's going to take a little bit longer.
Great question. Anybody else on the 203K? I think the other thing, I'm hearing a lot that's just way up are the arms. People are looking at these short-term, rates to try and get something affordable, because I think, like Dan said, what is it? Half of the US can't afford the average price home, and I'm hearing it from agents. It's not structuring deals. It's finding their biggest issue seems to be finding clients that can afford to buy a home in this environment right now. And that comes back to just this used to be the game. You had to do more prospecting. You had to talk to more people. Unfortunately, it's been pretty easy for a while, and I think it's catching up to a lot of agents, especially those that maybe got in the past few years. So hopefully, if you're starting to slow down, you're going, hey, it's time to change something. I got to change my marketing. I got to change my outreach. I got to make more phone calls. I got to go to more events. I got to talk to more people. Adam, are you still in a position to chat? Are you on with us?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to keep it to audio only, and my reception's not the best.
Okay. The reason I'm calling on Adam this morning is one of the topics that I had is with things starting to slow down a little bit. I just wanted to chat about the importance of staging. And I wanted my brother to speak to this because he does a lot of it, right? When he's flipping his houses, he is always staging them. And I just pulled a couple of stats here. Let's see if I can find, where did I put my staging stats? And then I'll let you kind of speak to it, Adam. So a staged home, the number one thing was 83% of buyers agents saying staging makes it easier for the client to connect with the properties. They can just visualize themselves in the home better than a vacant home or a cluttered home. A survey of NAR agents found that 49% of listing agents said that staging reduced what they believed to be the time that it took to sell the property. 29% of agents reported staging led to somewhere between a 1 to 10% increase in the offer that they got. So that's agents saying, hey, when you listed a property and it was staged, how much do you think it helped? So anywhere from 1 to 10%. And now, of course, the Staging Association, the Real Estate Staging Association, RESA, said that their stats say staging a home can deliver an ROI of 5 to 15%. So I think one of the key things that it does, and then Adam, I'll let you have the floor a little bit, is it helps to get the person from the computer to the property itself, because that's a big part of the game right now. Is everybody starts online, so how do we show them enough to get them from online to the house? And then obviously, if you can get them to the house, we take the first bullet point, which I mentioned, which is now you get that emotional connection. Man, I could see myself living here. So, Adam, what are your thoughts? I know you've done this dozens of times at this point.
Yeah, so I mean, you said I always stage, and that's right. I can't think of a time, at least on my personal property, I'm the seller, that I would not be willing to spend, call it about $500 a month until it sells, money on staging. So there's two types of staging. There's obviously virtual staging, which is virtual. You get the pictures from the photographer, and they can either send it out for you, or I use the service called Box Brownie. They do everything. They do skies, they do object removal, they do living room placement, whatever you want. I'm not a huge fan of virtual staging. I think it's better than physical stage. It's better than nothing, but I just think there's a letdown factor when you get into the house. So you're going to have clients that don't want to spend money on their own. So you have two options. You can do virtual staging, where you have it virtual staged. And then what I did in this case was I printed out the virtual staging pictures and put them on easels and put them in the room, to at least give the client a reminder of what this room could look like. And I did some fancy stuff with some QR codes and linked to my landing page, and it was a marketing opportunity too. So that's kind of option one. I don't love it, but it's better than nothing. I think
Adam, let me interrupt you there. So that you did because the seller wasn't willing to do the staging?
Right. So they
Okay.
didn't want to invest in their own money. I mean, this was in Florida where properties are upside down and they're like, I just, I can't afford to, spend $1 on this thing. So obviously I argued with them, but, what I did was I have a staging arsenal of what I call knickknacks, the stuff for the kitchens, the stuff for the bathrooms. I have a whole storage unit filled with that stuff. So I staged it, with the knickknacks. We just didn't purchase the furniture. So, when you go physical staging, obviously you can use what the client has in their own room, but when you have a vacant house, that's where I bring in the Rent-A-Center. So there's two big ones around here. There's Rent-A-Center and Aaron's. I've found Rent-A-Center to be about half the price of Aaron's, so I've stuck with Rent-A-Center. It's about $150 to $175 a room. So whether that be a dining room, whether that be a master bedroom, primary bedroom, whether that be a living room set, they price it by the piece and you just have to do 1 month minimum. So the typical house that I stage is living room, dining room, primary bedroom. It's about $450 to $500 per month. And I usually leave it until the appraiser or the appraisal report comes back. I don't want to, I want to impress the appraiser just as much as I do the client. And then it's a balancing act of how well you think the deal is going to stay together so you don't have to unstage it and restage it. So, and they also don't charge a delivery or setup fee or removal fee. So it's going to take a lot of $500 a month for me to get, because people ask me, why don't I just buy my own stuff? And it's like, you got to have a place to store it. It's got to not get damaged. And you got to pay laborers to bring it and take it out, which is probably $150 on each end. So yeah, I mean, we stage every house without question, and it's a no-brainer to me. I might even be impressed with my own flip, and then it gets staged, and I'm like, this just looks amazing. And then I have my own knickknacks that the stager brings in. So I do have my own stager. In this case, it's my wife and her friend. They do the staging. They've done it enough where we've got, probably 10 bathrooms, because I've got 2 houses staged at the same time, and I'll probably have 3 staged at the same time going forward in the next week. So I don't know, does that answer some questions?
Yeah. Let's just open the floor and see what people might have for questions. Anything. Obviously, if you're paying a professional stager, these numbers are going to be more, but it could be part of the services. This could be some part of your listing presentation of why should they go with you. Hey, I'm going to do the staging for you, right? You might just ask them to pick up the cost of the furniture on the monthly basis, but hey, I'll do all the planning, I'll do all the organizing. I know some agents will have their own knickknacks, right? They just have a room at their house or in their basement where they keep all the little knickknacks. That stuff's not as difficult to keep and set up at every listing, right? Versus the big dining room tables and couches and et cetera. Any other questions on staging? Go ahead, Martin.
So my question is, as far as staging, what happens? Is it only on vacant? What about if someone's living there and their furniture is just absolutely awful?
I mean, my take, I don't know what, Adam, do you want to answer or?
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to the client, and this comes down to some experience as a listing agent too. I'll never forget the listing I lost because I recommended or perhaps suggested that we take wallpaper down in the dining room. It was the only room that had wallpaper. And I lost the listing because the next agent came in and said, you don't have to take down the wallpaper. Well, shit, that's on me, right? I didn't come across clear as that. I thought it would get you more money. I thought it was a very low cost repair. I mean, it's pretty much just labor and a $40 gallon of paint and a paintbrush. So to transform a whole room for $45 was a no-brainer to me. But to that client who listened to the next agent, so I think you got to keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, when the house looks like grandma's house, no hurt out to the grandmas on the call, but when it looks like grandma's house versus a modern house you see in a magazine, you're going to get more money, period, end of story. I don't think you could argue that. Because a lot of times these houses are older houses that are 3-4 bedrooms, and there's going to be a a lot of people moving in, a younger generation, and they're not looking for grandma stuff. So, it amazes me when you see these HGTV shows where people can't even get past a paint color. Oh, I love the house, but it's this color. I love that room, but it's pink. It's like, well, get a paintbrush and paint it. So the more you can do up front to minimize buyers' thought process of what they have to do when they get in the house, I think is better. So long-winded way of saying, recommend it, suggest it, but just make sure they don't feel like it's a requirement.
Who else has got questions on staging? The other thing you guys could do too is if you really think the house needs to be staged, and you've got a seller who can't afford it, doesn't want to spend the money, doesn't think it's going to be worth it, you could say, hey, look, I'll incur the $500 a month cost. I know this is going to help sell our house, right? But now it's going to change my commission, right? And kind of build it in that way. So if you really think it's going to be that much of a difference, and say, hey, I'm willing to bet on myself. I know this is going to work on this property. Let's do it. And that could be what gets you the listing. But I don't think you can overstate Adam's point about being careful, making sure you are connected with that seller on what emotionally they can handle. Because just selling a house, just that alone, it can be extremely overwhelming for a lot of people. So now you want them to do extra stuff or move stuff or, oh my God, we got to, get rid of this stuff and it's going to take me months. And the other agent said I could just list it as is. When listing it as is does not get them the most money. They don't care. They just don't want the extra burden right now. So make sure you are having these conversations. Few minutes left. Any other topics, something that we've already covered that you have a follow-up question on? Katie, I saw you jumped on. You want to hit your use and occupancy stuff? We could wrap with that.
Yeah, so I think this is one we could maybe even carry over into next week and chat a little bit, because I kind of wanted all of your opinions on it and what you thought. So I know you've all had deals where you've got a seller who is then buying same day. So we call them domino closings. They can get very stressful, as everybody knows, because everything is happening all at once. And one of my biggest things that I've said over and over is you always want to prepare that seller who is then buying that they will be homeless for a portion of that day, because one closing has to go to record and finalize before the other can get the ball rolling. So with that being said, I always, speak that to my clients as well when they come in. So we had a client a few weeks ago who, was looking to sell same day. They were selling in Connecticut, buying in Massachusetts. And I kind of gave them the same spiel. I'm like, understood, domino closings, please be aware they're very stressful. There's a lot of moving parts. And also please be aware that there will be a portion of the day that you'll be homeless, like where one sale will have to go through and you've got nowhere to go until the next sale goes through, and then you can move into the new place. And they said, that actually really won't work for us. We've got a lot of animals and we've got a couple of kids, and one of them has some major health issues, and it involves being hooked up to a machine for a part of the day for, breathing purposes, to help them breathe. So hotels were not going to be an option, and they were really concerned. And so I spoke with their agent, and what we came up with, and what I had said to her was, feel out the deal. And these people are very well qualified. They're putting in a phenomenal cash offer, high numbers, everything's looking really good. Not a lot of red flags about this possibly not moving forward. I said, in this instance where they are really well qualified and this looks like it's going to go through with no issues, I recommend putting a contingency right into the offer saying this is subject to the sale of, the seller's current residence. That's going to be closing on the same day. If by chance that goes to record and we do not get to record on the purchase, that the sellers grant a use and occupancy to the buyers. So it was written in there automatically that they would be able to get in. They would not, because a lot of attorneys do not want to grant a use and occupancy, even if the seller is like, no, it's fine, that the attorneys don't like it because of the liabilities it opens up. So the attorney that the sellers had in this deal, they did not want to grant use and occupancy. And I think 5 different times I had to bring up, this has already been approved in the offer and it's already been approved in the PNS. Like they will be moving in there. Like if we don't get to record, that's happening. And it's a big one. I kind of think it's a contingency that would take a lot of people out of the running if, if it were between a couple different offers. But I think if you've got a really well qualified buyer and there's a need where, you've got an ill child or, pets or something that makes hotels not feasible. What do you guys think? Is it something that you would think about throwing in there, or is it, something that you think is a deal breaker for too many people?
I'll tell you, my initial take, Katie, is like, it doesn't matter if it's a deal breaker. Like, you've got to get people's needs, because if that situation arises and we don't have that language in there, they're never going to let you forget it. And you are going to get, you are going to get trashed as the agent, as the attorney, as everything. That how could you have let me into this situation? Right. So if you've got clients that you feel like, hey, this could be a scenario for them where they just can't afford to not be in the next property, we've got to get this language in there. And you got to have that conversation with them that this is probably going to prevent us from getting a house or two, right? Maybe even more. But it doesn't sound like you guys are going to be comfortable if this scenario arises and we don't have that language. So that's my initial take on it.
So now if you take away the fact that they did have those kind of extended needs for the children and the pets, how do you feel about it for just a standard, seller buyer same day who, just wants to get in? Do you think it's worth killing deals when there isn't that great need behind it?
No.
Yeah.
They'll get over the one night they bought you for that hotel, or they can't go stay at mom and dad's because they don't get along and will just throw stuff at each other. A week from now, a year from now, they're not even going to care.
Yep.
Like, it is not worth losing a house over if it's not a dire need.
Yeah. And in the moment, to them, it's the end of the world. They are just beyond themselves and lost. But like I say, I think if you don't have the need behind it, I think that's a really strict contingency that's going to take them out of the running of a lot of properties. But in this instance, I say it worked because there was a need that was greater than the risk of losing it.
Well, if you have any other questions on use and occupancy, definitely jot them down and we can hit this up next week. So great conversations today. Appreciate you guys every Wednesday morning. If you're watching this on a social media feed and you want to join the conversation, don't forget you can join us every week on Zoom, and we can put your smiling face up on camera and have you ask or answer some of the questions that we turn up. So we'd love to have you follow us live, or join us live, on our Zoom call. So have a great week ahead, everybody. Hopefully you got something out of today's call that will make you a better agent moving forward. So appreciate y'all, and we'll do it again next Wednesday. Take care.
Have a good one.